Good morning and welcome to the House Insurance Committee for Tuesday, January the 25th. Mr. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Representatives Carr, Sapicki, Freeman, Hawk, Hicks, Hodges, Johnson, Lafferty, Mitchell, Powers, Rudd, Smith, Terry, Thompson, White, Vice Chair Lady Rudder,
Here.
Chairman Kumar. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, do we have any personal orders this morning? Yes, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I'd just like to introduce my intern. She's shadowing me today. I'm very proud to have an intern this year. She's been very helpful so far. And in the back, I have Miss Sherry Sampson. Sherry, if you'll stand up, raise your hand right there. Let's everyone give her a good round of applause and welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Members, today we're hearing a presentation from the Department of Commerce and Insurance on mental health parity. And as the department comes forward, we'll go out of session. Please introduce yourself and for the record, and we'll be ready to begin.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill Huddleston, Assistant Commissioner with the Department of Commerce and Insurance. And I have responsibility for all of the insurance regulation in our department. Thank you for making time this morning to hear about mental health parity and letting us present this report or this presentation. Report was submitted yesterday. This issue, I know, is something that's touched probably everybody in this room at some point, especially over the past year and a half or two, has been exacerbated by different things with COVID. I would like to say my intent was to have an outreach specialist who actually goes out and does presentations on mental health parity. She was going to be with me today. She presents to the consumer, and so we were going to be able to see from that standpoint an educational piece. Unfortunately, she's ill, so it's going to just be me today talking about some highlights from the report that we submitted and how we regulate for mental health parity at the department. Given that, I think what I'd like to do is just begin. I know everybody in here knows a good bit about the topic, but maybe to get everybody to page one, just to be at the same place to define mental health parity as we're talking about it in this report. So the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act in 2008 mandates that all mental health coverages be covered the same as non-mental health coverages, meaning coverage for mental health services cannot be less beneficial than non-mental health services that are covered. So at the department, we obviously regulate insurance policies. We regulate the market. And to kind of put things in context, we have jurisdiction or authority over about 30% of the insurance market in the state of Tennessee. We have jurisdiction over the ACA marketplace. We regulate fully insured plans in small group and large group. So the rest of that falls under some federal oversight, preempted by ERISA, but we have that authority over about 30% of the market. So with that being said, I'd like to kind of go into the ways we regulate. And I've got a slide deck here if you can figure out how to use it. There we go. So this slide has the definition that we talked about for mental health parity. I'm just going to kind of move on to this next slide. It's the beginning of how we regulate. Maybe an easy way to think about it is before, during, and after. We have different ways that we go about this regulation. And so the first thing that we do has to do with policy analysis. And that's what we're talking about here on this slide. We, before plans are marketed or sold in the state, they have to be approved by our department. And all forms, rates come through us. We review for multiple things. Specifically on mental health parity, we look at quantitative treatment limitations and non-quantitative treatment limitations. So examples would be, for instance, on the quantitative side, we want to make sure that cost sharing for mental health services is at parity with non-mental health services. And visit limitations would be another one. We also review non-quantitative treatment limitations, and those type of, an example of that would be step therapy or prior authorization, credentialing. Those type of things are what we look at there. So when we look for those things, if we find mistakes within the policy, we send it back to the carrier. The carrier corrects that, and if it's suitable, then we approve. Those are all submitted through a system called SURF. It's it's electronic rate form and filing system, and that is all public information. So it's out there as soon as it's filed. You can see the communication and the forms, and you can get to that through our website. So that's easily accessible to anybody that wants to see that. Last year, we found, I think, a dozen corrections, and specifically for mental health parity, there were some that had to do with age discrimination they had applied behavior analysis. One carrier had it for 12 years old and under, and we sent it back because to be at parity with the other coverages, they had to be at 19 years old. So we sent that back, they corrected it, and it got approved. That's kind of the before it ever goes to market. That's what we're looking at. So from there, we regulate the during part is our consumer insurance services, and my director, her name is Vicki Trice. She handles complaints across all insurance products. They get thousands of phone calls a year, and some of those are satisfied with education, talking to consumers when they call in. The caller may need help having something explained. But a lot of those into formal complaints. Again, that's 3,500 across all insurance lines. But we when those complaints are filed, have mediation authority to work between the consumer and the carrier, try to work out a solution. Our department reviews to see if those are in compliance with state law, with the policy, and if not, we refer that to our legal department, who then takes appropriate action. I guess when we're talking about just mental health parity on the complaints last year, we only received 5 complaints out of the whole year. Those were all provider complaints. We did not get any complaints from consumers or patients on that. The nature of most of those 5 complaints had to do with communication. They didn't end up being parity issues so much as they were notifications on rates and reimbursements. So that's all detailed in the report that we submitted yesterday. All of these complaints are kept. We keep records of those. We code it and keep those records retained in uniformity with some NAIC or National Association of Insurance Commissioner standards. So that's all there. A lot of that information is confidential though because of the sensitive nature that it with the consumer. So I'm going to kind of move on to the next piece is the after part now. The we do examinations statutorily required, and those are every 5 years. We have to do those for accreditation so that our insurance companies that are domestics here can be accepted in other states. And out of our domestics, we have 68 domestic insurance companies in Tennessee that we're responsible for performing those examinations. They entail everything from financial monitoring for solvency to market conduct. And so those always have market conduct reviews in them, which is about claims handling, complaint handling. They look at a lot of, there's the list on the slide. They look at a lot of things market conduct wise. Per the public chapter 244 that this report is for, we had 13 exams last year that were completed. None of those out of the 68 were that were required to have mental health parity. They were not health companies. Right now, we are in the process of examinations, and we have 14 that are going right now that are in process. 2 of those are on companies that have those mental health parity requirements. We've added to the market conduct reviews that were already in the examination process. We've added some analysis for mental health parity and specifically to look at mental health parity. And we will have those reports. They should be adopted by June and posted to the website. That will, I guess, in addition to those full scope exams, we're involved right now with a market conduct exam that's a multi-state exam. I think 14 states are on that, started by and led by Pennsylvania. But we have a company that sells policies here that another state found issues with documentation that they didn't turn in on comparative analysis of those non-quantitative treatment limitations. So that's in process right now as well. Another important thing about that is we will review what the work that's done on that market conduct exam, and if there is a financial penalty on that company when all is said and done, we will receive a share of that money, those funds, and it's based on policies written in the state. So as far as our department's regulation, that's very summarized, but that's what we do. And I would kind of like to move on from there to some outreach that we've done this year to work with. We've worked with several associations, NAMI. We've worked with other government state agencies here, Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. We've had meetings with them and kind of got to listen to what would be helpful. And we've done some things based on those suggestions. We've worked on our website. We've made it more friendly, more readable. We've actually created a page on the website specifically for mental health parity. We've also done some op-eds. We've really done press releases with other agencies and some social media information. So we've been involved in I think one or two town halls. Our outreach spoke at that with some of the associations to raise awareness. So over the past year and a half or two, we've really done some things to try and work with other stakeholders to raise awareness around this and be more responsive. So again, very summarized and a view of what we've done with outreach, but that's kind of what I have today. I'm glad to answer any questions. I know we just submitted that report yesterday, but if you have questions a week or two from now after reviewing that, I'm always available, always glad to help however I can. So thanks.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Chairman Hawk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Huddleston, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. You may have stated this before, and I want to state how critically important it is that we ensure Tennesseans have the availability of these mental health, behavioral health services, and insurance is a big part of that. You may have said this before, but fill in the blank for me. All the health insurance entities that we regulate in Tennessee, do they all provide a mental health, behavioral health component to their service?
Chairman, good question. Thank you. So not all of them do, or not all of them are required to. The most of what we regulate at the department does require those coverages. There are certain entities at the department that we have jurisdiction over that aren't part of that 8 that are listed in the report, such as association health plans. MIWAs don't have to offer it. But then there's also the piece that is outside of our jurisdiction that is sold here. So large group ERISA plans, for instance, if they don't offer, well, they don't have to offer that. So there's a couple of dividing lines there, but I hope that answers.
Thank you, Madam
You
Chair.
recognized, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there specific plans out there just dealing with mental health and behavioral health? Are there companies that are coming into this field specifically dealing with the component of our subject today outside the other areas of insurance?
I'm not aware of any. I know none of our domestics, nothing that we have fits that criteria. And so outside of that, I'm not sure. Not that I know of.
And just to finish up the thought, and thank you again, Chair Lady, that's critically important to all of our constituents, and becomes more and more, as you opened your comments, becoming more and more important all the time as we see young school children. My younger daughter's elementary school, there was a second grader who had to be institutionalized for a brief time because of a episode that they were having at school, and it's becoming more and more and more important all the time. And the fact that we're recognizing that as a state, saying that we're here to do something about that, and want to make our state as good as it possibly can, providing these particular opportunities for our citizens to seek care is critically important. So thank you for the work that the department does. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to say a word.
Next, Representative Lafferty.
Thank you, Ms. Chair Lady. Thanks for being here. Just a quick question, and you guys were kind of touching on it a little bit, I think. Just wanted to clarify. Are insurance providers required to have, people that are providing health insurance, are they required to have mental health coverage on every policy, or is that something that a consumer can choose to have or not have on a policy? Could you just clarify that for me?
Yes, thank you, Representative. And it is kind of hard to clarify some of it because of those lines between different types of plans and what might be non-ERISA or ERISA. But I think what might answer your question best is if for mental health parity, if the coverage is offered, it has to be at parity with those non-mental health services. So there are requirements for certain plans that are, it's just not across the board that all health plans would have to offer it.
You're recognized.
Thank you. Let me try a scenario then. I'm a small business owner. I employ my family and a couple other people. I'm looking for the best bargain basement rate health insurance I can for catastrophic coverage, just to make sure that we don't go bankrupt for a health cause. On a policy like that, do I have a choice to say, no, thank you, I don't want to pay extra premium for mental health coverage, or is that bundled together and grouped in with all of it? I guess if you answer that, I think that answered my question.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So with the self-insured plan, when you say small business owner, that immediately makes me think you're paying for part of it. So it's self-insured, not fully insured. And again, some of those, it depends on the groups. So I think the large group, if you have if it's a large insured group, that's not required to be covered. Small groups in that scenario would be. Because it's again, the ERISA piece of it kind of takes it out of our court too.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Next, we have Representative Smith.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you for being here, Mr. Huddleston. And a couple of questions, and if the Chair Lady would indulge me on these, back to the idea of complaints. I understand that I've worked personally with Ms. Trice. She's fantastic. Hope she gets a bonus or something for all the hard work she does. But all to be said, am I hearing you say that there's a focus on complaints rather than standards? Because when I look through, and again, I appreciate the opportunity for a consumer to have the opportunity to issue a complaint. But when you are doing your market review, are you all looking more for standards, like for instance, network adequacy? And who defines that? Is it you as the TDCI entity, or is it the provider that defines network adequacy? Because so many times I hear that it's hard to get in to see anyone, whether it's behavioral health, counseling, psychiatry, whatever. And so while that may be a complaint, it really doesn't matter if there's not a standard in place, that there's a requirement for a minimum network adequacy. And then how is it that there are any teeth behind that?
Thank you, Representative, and thanks for the kind words about Vicky. She does a great job, so thank you. So there, on that piece, when it gets to her, it is about the complaint. We do in the examination piece, and this is not just the state level either. This also goes to some of the federal oversight. They look at they also look at standards, and so especially in that non-quantitative treatment, in that piece of the analysis, there is substantive work done, not just review to say, hey, was the analysis complete, but is this really living up to what is expected in operation? Is it operationally what it's supposed to be? So as far as specifically on network adequacy, right now we rely on the definition that is at the federal level. I don't have a state definition for it. I don't have it. We just don't have it. And so we end up relying on that federal definition.
You're recognized.
Well, we tried to have a state definition last year, and it's all good. Follow-up question on you mentioned the federal oversight. One of the things I'm aware of is in the space of Tenncare, so many folks end up being served by Tenncare with mental illness because they don't have the capacity to work, and therefore they lose their health insurance. So in the space of Tenncare, and I know that your report, I think on one of the last couple of pages that you issued yesterday, referenced that TDCI has oversight with Tenncare. kind of walk me through the process. Do our MCOs provide that coverage directly? Do they contract that out? Again, back to the network adequacy. Who makes that determination, and how is it that you test that? Because as I understand, we made a few little headlines last year because of owing some money back to CMS because of some lack of benefits that were not provided in that behavioral health space. So if you would kind of speak to how is it that Tenncare patients receive behavioral health, mental health parity, how do you oversee that, and kind of give us an update on that oversight issue?
Sure thing. I'll do my best. So Tenncare is at the department. It is not under, that's a different piece from me. So we have a different assistant commissioner that oversees that. So, but I'm going to do my best to,
Sure.
to answer that. And if we need more details, I'm glad to get that to you later. But I know that some of it is contracted out, that there are the federal requirements that they have to meet, and that every year, as required by statute, report is submitted by those MCOs to Tenncare for the reporting on those standards and to make sure. I think if I understood correctly last year, those reports as they were turned in, I don't think that any issues were noted that I was made aware of. That again, I'm not in the details on that, so I can find out for sure.
Yes, Robert, Representative Smith.
It's okay, Chairman. If you wouldn't mind following up just with an email, because I'd really like to understand the process, because I just know that a growing portion of our Tenncare population is indeed assigned with a mental health diagnosis. And if we don't have adequate providers, if we don't have network adequacy, and I just want to understand where we stand in all of that, that'd be very helpful. But thank you so much for your responses.
Absolutely glad to do that, Representative.
Do we have any more questions? Seeing none, I would like to thank the department for the presentation today. We will go back into session. As announced last night on the House floor, the presentation from local pharmacists on pharmacy benefit managers has been canceled and will be rescheduled for a later date. And seeing no further business, without objection, we'll stand adjourned.